it's rude.
Well, I hope it's not rude, because I do it all the time. Well, mainly to staff, but you know, I'll be like, I'm always giving thumbs up. How's it rude?
I don't know, it's something I've seen in Simpsons boat posting and stuff like that. Which is, it can be a good source of news along with the Socialist Republic of Father Ted posting group.
Oh, right, yeah, I see. No problems. Let's get rid of the rest of the shite here now. We're not on yet, are we?
30 seconds, then the intro.
Cool.
About 40 seconds.
I wouldn't mind seeing that countdown on the wall again. It was very good a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
And before that.
Just need to try and pinch that telly back.
Or just get our own telly.
I'll get our own, yeah. I'm going to go into the intro.
Welcome to a little bit of Behind the Whites. Now, before we get properly started, we do have a little bit of serious talk because we have a very important appeal. As you may notice, someone's nicked our couch. What's going on? Chris, where's the couch?
Well, it's there.
Well, yeah, I suppose it is. It's just off shot. Someone has stolen our couch, but only temporarily, so do not worry. We will be back to our normal plush-looking surroundings in the following weeks, but it's alright because there's only two of us today because Pete swanned off to Romania.
Yeah, again, you can't do that thing of criticising him when I ended up missing the first one that we did here
Well, that's true.
a few weeks back. But if he has to go off gallivanting, he has to go off gallivanting.
Gallivanting around Europe, I tell you. But we'll drag him back and we'll get him back in the studio, so don't worry about that. Hope you're all doing very, very well. Thank you for joining us here on Behind the Whites. We've got plenty to get stuck into. Of course, the season has come to a close, and in the coming weeks we will be bringing you a little bit of a season review. But next week, bit of housekeeping, isn't it? Next week we won't be here, as we do have a very important meeting to be at, all of us. So we will be taking a little cheeky week off. But we'll try and find some content to throw your way in the meantime. Anyway, so in a couple of weeks we'll be doing our review of the season, and yeah. So I don't know. Pat yourself some comfort food, I suppose, for that one, and maybe some tissues to mop up the tears as we go back through Wanderers' less than stellar season. But it has all come to a close, of course, against Stevenage at the weekend. We'll get stuck into that game. It was as well the end of year awards, and myself and Chris were lucky enough to be in attendance, so we could have a little bit of a blather about that as well. But of course, as per usual, we'll start with a little bit of news. And first up, of course, the big news this week, Chris, it's the retained release list, and it has been now released. The retained list has been released. Rico Santos, Gethin Jones and Nathan Baxter and Joel Coleman are the first team players who will not be staying for another season at the club. And I suppose the big news there, really, Rico Santos, I think, Gethin Jones and Nathan Baxter. I mean, no disrespect to Joel Coleman, but he wasn't a first teamer on the same level that the other three were. I don't think there's any major surprises there. I think the one I was more surprised at actually was Nathan Baxter, because I felt that personally I would have kept him on for another season, but at the same time, he would have been my number two. And if Stephen Schumacher's thinking like the same way, that Southwood is number one, I can see why maybe he was like, you know what, I'll go and play first team somewhere else rather than sit on the bench for a season, because I think he gets another first team gig in League One, if I'm honest. I know he had that howler a couple of weeks ago and that some of the fans have been on his back, but if you look back at his history, over his entire history at Bolton Wanderers, he's had some very, very good performances. He's looked very, very solid at times. I don't think he deserves the kind of the stick that he's got towards the end of his term, although that criticism for that particular howler a couple of games ago, yeah, fair enough. probably
Yeah,
deserve
quite
a stick
warranted,
for that
I
one.
think we can say.
But generally, I think he's a decent keeper. He's a very good shot stopper. I don't think he's necessarily quite as good with his feet as Southwood is. I don't think he's as good of a distributor as Southwood is. That's why I pumped for Southwood being the number one. In that case, Baxter will find himself another gig, and we can save on some wages, I suppose, that can be reinvested into the team.
All I'm thinking is, we did the whole thing last week with Rico where we kind of had it figured out that he might well be on his way out.
We knew there was a strong possibility that that would be the case. You know, changing the guard, he was synonymous with the era. He's been at the club for 5 years, which is a long, long time in modern football for a player to be at a club. He's captained the club, he's led the club out at Wembley, he got promoted with the club. There's not much else he could have done for Wanderers really, and I think naturally both ways, I think the time was right.
I'd agree with that, and well, we ended up waxing lyrical about the good and unfortunately some of the bad that happened whilst he was on the books of Bolton. So in his departure being announced wasn't a great surprise. I think it was interesting before the list I should say was unveiled.
Yeah.
They ended up doing separate videos separate videos. Doing Rico's on his way out and Gethin's on his way out as well.
Again, both been at the club for 5 years.
Yeah,
Again,
maybe that's it.
It's a long time, and I think that, you know, Rico as the captain for Papa John's and stuff like that, I think he's been synonymous with bringing the good times back to Wanderers. I know that this season went the way it went, and I know that the playoffs last season went the way they went. We had that day at Wembley that wasn't great. But if you look at where we were when these players were brought in and where we are now, the atmosphere around the club has completely transformed from even before we were relegated to League Two. You know, from the Ken Anderson era, when things were just slowly going downhill and getting worse and worse and worse. There was such a terrible atmosphere around the fan base, such a terrible atmosphere around the club. That's all changed since Football Ventures, and realistically, since Ian Evatt was made the manager of the club, and we went from League Two up to League One, and up to that Papa John's, and even up to that playoff final where how things have been different. I think we'd still be riding that wave of, you know, everything's great, but they are two players for me that are synonymous with that time period. Rico because he was the captain and because of the legs out the Papa John's and all of that, and Gethin because of Gethin's story and everything that went on with his mother and MND and the club's response to supporting him and his family and the way that the fans got on board with that. And I just think that entire thing, albeit not an on-pitch event, it just tied Gethin Jones and Bolton Wanderers together indefinitely, and I think there will always be a link between Gethin Jones and Bolton Wanderers that is very much, you know, mutually appreciated.
You think back to the announcement of his mother being diagnosed with motor neuron disease, and the club very quickly got on board. They arranged that charity match, which ended up being a lot of fun.
Great fun, you know, we covered it on Bolton FM.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
He never bagged an hat-trick. Honestly, there were times last season I was thinking, could he not just come on and bang in a goal, you know? So
Maybe for the B team, but never for the first team.
but realistically, yeah, that response, and again, I think it was another one of those moments that, although it was obviously a very tragic situation for Gethin and his family, it kind of fueled it more into that sense of community that the club has, that sense that we're all, you know, the good and the bad, we're all one family, we're all Bolton Wanderers, and I think that really illustrated that, and it really spread the atmosphere even more to the fans because they felt so involved and they felt so personally connected to it that they really wanted to get involved and help, and that's the kind of good that a football club can do, and I think that Gethin Jones will always be synonymous with that, and it wouldn't surprise me if in a few years' time when he hangs up the boots, if there was something else in the works for Gethin Jones to come in and do something else at the club, whether that be coaching or whether it be on the community side of things, you know, encompassing that spirit that we saw then and pumping that forward, because we know, you know, Community Trust, of course, are a fantastic organisation. I think there could be, you know, no end of possibilities there with the connection that the club has with him.
You think back to 2023, where in the space of a few weeks, his mother passes away, start of March 2023, and all minds have to focus there afterwards onto the EFL Trophy final. in a way, it was very suitably fitting that he ended up scoring the fourth and final goal that afternoon.
Yeah,
And
again, that
you
was
could tell how much it
massive.
meant to him. He really wanted to cry when he looks up to the heavens, saying, "That was for you, Mum." I think
And all
seem to
around
remember
you've got
it was
Wanderers fans
Elias.
who were absolutely.
I think it was
Brilliant.
Kachunga who, or someone who ended up saying, "No, go and celebrate with the fans because it means as much to them as it does to you." So I thought
And
that
it
was
did.
a really good
You know,
touch.
it was such a great little caveat to, you know, a really tough time, a really tough journey that was obviously, you know, very, very sad and must have been so difficult for Gethin and his family, but also contained a lot of love as well from the club and from the fans and from the wider footballing family as well. You know, I think he'll always be synonymous with that. And he mentioned that in his statement, didn't he?
Yeah, well, both of them ended up doing lengthy statements, but if you did read them, you could tell that it was them behind it. It wasn't something that the club had worked on. And
No,
just said,
absolutely.
right, we'll ghostwrite this for you, just claim it as your own.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like the footballers who write
Of
columns
course, yeah.
in newspapers.
But,
Well, it's not really a thing as much
well,
anymore,
no, not
but
so much.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, but this is clearly written by them. And he says, getting in his statement, he says, the biggest thing for me beyond the football was how this club and you fans treated me and my family when my mum was ill. The support, the fundraising, just the kindness shown by everyone, from Sharon and the board, Ian Everett and his staff, and everyone. It was incredible. It got us through the toughest time and genuinely helped keep us all going. I can't thank you enough for that. It's something my family and I will never forget, and that is, and will always be so grateful for. And it just absolutely typifies that period, and to have that impact and to have that connection with somebody, I think he's bigger than football, as he says, and I think that there'll always be a connection between Wanderers and Gethin Jones. With Rico, obviously, it's a little bit different, but at the same time, again, somebody else that will always be connected with that period of time, and I think as much as he might not have had the best games towards the end of his Wanderers career, I think we are now starting to understand that he was breaking down a little bit from injuries because he'd probably given too much to the cause when he really should have been not giving as much. He should have been not playing, he should have been rested, he should have been recovering properly from his injuries, but his insistence on trying to get back into the team, his insistence on playing through injuries, because again, as the captain, or as later on the former captain, he still had that kind of leadership role within the team, and he felt like, I would imagine, he felt like he had to be out there, when I think there were times when it was detrimental to his game and thus detrimental to the squad, but it was never a case of footballers going out there and thinking, well, I'm not going to be good today, I can't be bothered, because they're professional footballers, and you can see that, and you can see it in the frustration when they are having a bad game. But I think that we've got to the point again with Rico. I think it works. I think it's probably the best for everybody that there's a change, and we'll see where he goes. And I wish both players all the best.
I think with Gethin, it is good that it's ending now for him, because I think to an extent, perhaps not injury-wise, but because he's ended up doing so much in terms of playing football over the last few years, getting called up to Australia to play for them in the Asia Cup, for example, great moment for him. It never quite felt right for him, I'd have to say, when he returned from that tournament. Was it in Qatar or something like that?
I think there was a tightness there.
And my mate ended up saying this.
You often see with the AFCON players in the Premier League team,
They're
have
never
to come
quite
back
the
a little
same.
bit jaded, and they have to. You feel like they're playing catch up for the rest of the season.
Yes, and Gethin, my mate pointed this out, and it only became apparent when he said so. Whenever he ended up losing possession and it led to the concession of a goal, he ended up doing that thing of throwing his arms out in the air as if to say, why didn't anyone stop that? Well, to be honest, it was your concession of possession that led to the goal in the first place. Maybe you ought to be seen to take a little bit more in the way of responsibility. I think that maybe was what led a few fans to sour on him towards the end of his tenure. But like Rico, the good stuff that he ended up contributing in those first few years, I think it certainly outweighs the bad.
Absolutely, and football's one of those that in the heat of the moment, people, get very, very passionate, and that can come out in negative ways sometimes, and in saying things that, if you actually think about, you probably wouldn't Actually, no, I'm talking rubbish there, but it happens. I think in a couple of years' time, both the players have looked back on very, very fondly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
You know, they rock back up for doing half-time draw. There ain't going to be people annoyed about it. They're going to get a great reception. And absolutely, so they should.
Yeah, well, that's the value of half-time draws, isn't it?
Yes.
Nathan Baxter, did you ever interview him at all?
No, I didn't interview Nathan.
Well, a couple of times I did, and he'd give detailed answers. That'd be a good thing to whatever question it might be. Although, whether it be in relation to whatever the question was that you put in the first place, it's kind of immaterial in a sense.
Well, you know, they do say goalkeepers are a little bit mad, so maybe there's just a little bit of that.
In a sense, there is, but he could be, I don't know, a bit prickly with you, where you'd end up pointing out, well, you did very well in that appearance back in September. Oh, I didn't play in that game. And you go, yeah, you did it. Your name's on the sheet. And you go, oh, and that's it. You just move on. But it just can't. It's just that kind of thing with Baxter. He just end up. He's got his way of dealing with stuff, and if you don't necessarily see eye to eye with him on it, he won't be overtly difficult with you, but he might be a bit passive aggressive, shall we say?
There you go. There you go. That's...
But I think what you said earlier on, between him and Luke Southwood, not a great deal of difference between the two of them.
No, I don't
Good
think...
shot stoppers,
Yeah.
but Luke out of the two of them, much better in terms of distribution.
Yeah, and I think he's just a bit more comfortable with the ball. I think the defence look a little bit more comfortable when they play it back to him, and he doesn't just tend to play short balls regardless, which I think Nathan sometimes did. Although that could have been coming from what he was being told to do by the manager. So
Do you think the wrist injury he got in February of last year, as seems to remember, ended up hurting him in the long run? Not physically,
no, but
certainly.
momentum-wise, and you know, you're in good form, and then you have to take time off. You come back. If you don't capture that form immediately, it can be a little bit difficult, I suppose, to get yourself back in the right headspace. But that's why you want two good goalkeepers, so there's that competition for places, which is kind of why I would have kept Nathan around. You know, he would have been my number 2 at the start of the season, but by all means, that opportunity comes up and you grab it, like he did this season. You know, Stephen Schumacher gave him an opportunity because he hadn't seen him play, and he obviously knew he'd played a lot of first-team football for us, so let's have to see what he can do. He played fantastically well in that game,
Yes.
and that's why he retained his position. And I saw people saying, well, why did he not bring Southwood back in? I was like, well, because did you see Baxter in that game? He was absolutely on fire. Like, he had a stellar performance. With the goalkeeper, you generally tend to be in until you either get hurt or you do something calamitous. And unfortunately for Nathan, back end of this season, he did something a little bit calamitous and thus lost his spot. And obviously, somewhere between him and Schumacher, there's a disconnect in terms of either playing time or personal details or whatever, that it's not going to happen unless, I mean, that's not to say that Schumacher just says, look, you're not going to be with plans, off you go. But I just don't see the logic in getting rid of a goalkeeper that's that good when if you bring in someone who knows they're going to be a bench sitter, really, you ain't going to get somebody as good as Nathan Baxter. And then if you get an injury to Southwood, suddenly you're relying on a lesser goalkeeper than you would have been.
Well, it does bring me on to the 4th member of the first team to be let go, Joe Coleman. Coleman, I thought when he came in that February-March period when Baxter was unavailable, iffy at first, but did grow into it. I think that's kind of been Joe Coleman's lot in his career.
Started poorly, improved, and then
ended up
Baxter came back.
Well, that's the thing with Coleman, he's never...
But he was always in as a backup, and I think that's the life of a backup goalkeeper.
I think he understands his role, and he's not one of those that goes to Instagram
He was a local...
cryptic messages about it.
No, he was a local lad as well, wasn't he?
Yeah,
you know,
very popular at North Bolton.
Exactly, and so for him to get a little run that run in the first team, I'm sure was a little bit of magic for him. You know, for a local lad to be playing for Bolton Wanderers, first team for a run. You know, it didn't last, and his time at the club's come to an end. But I'm sure, I hope it's not something he looks back on and thinks is a lot of rubbish.
No, it doesn't seem. Joe Coleman doesn't seem like the type of player to do that kind of thing. If he understands he's going to be there as a backup keeper, he's willing to accept it.
Exactly.
And I think his mindset is something that all goalkeepers, if they want to play in the Football League or the Premier League, you need to look at the mindset of someone like a Joel Coleman, who knows that he's not going to get featured every week, but got to be ready when the time comes, or if the time comes.
Yeah,
and if the manager ends up saying, our first choice is back, are you happy to go back onto the bench? And you go, yes, I am. I'm absolutely fine.
Yeah, I mean,
with
unless
that.
you come in and set the world on fire, then
And then it comes on to the potential backup now that Baxter hasn't been offered a new contract, because Luke Hutchinson has. I don't know whether he has agreed terms as of yet.
but he's been offered a new deal, and that'll be interesting. And maybe he'll just go straight into that number 2 role, and maybe it is, maybe Stephen Schumacher's looked at it and said, well, I'm not going to offer him a new deal because I'm going to bring him through, and that's going to limit his possible game time, because I'm going to have to try and give him some games.
From what I
Cups and
remember,
but
of
that
Luke-
wouldn't shock me.
From what I remember of Luke when he was loaned out to Everton Coles a few years back, they spoke very highly of him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a good
but,
spell by all
that
accounts,
stadium.
and that's good news.
Well, that has to be good news. After all, you want to get proper experience, and you know you're not going to get it at a team that's in the Football League. Go into men's football, go into the National League North, go into the Northern Premier League, go wherever you can to get some game
Senior
time.
football.
Whatever ends up working, go into men's senior football so that it'll aid your development as
And that's
much
why
as
I
it can
think,
do.
and that's why I think the B team is a good idea, and I think that's why the B team is going to yield more results in the future. You know, we've seen a few starting to pop through now from that B
Mhm.
team. If you think about what we had set up before that, there weren't that many graduates that were coming in and making a real impact in the first team, but now we've seen a few that have come in and maybe have the potential to do so. That's very interesting, and I think that part of it is because they play men's football.
Well, it does bring me on to the other thing as well, that the option for an extra year has been exercised for both Max Conway, who's had a stellar season by all counts at Crewe Alexandra,
Yeah.
and Sonny Sharples Ahmed.
Who's had some appearances in the first team.
Yeah.
For me, if you've got the option to extend their contract by a year, no-brainer.
Yes,
Just pull that trigger and get that contract extended, absolutely spot on.
beautifully logical on the part of Bolton Wanderers to do that. 9 players let go from the B team. Well, you made a mention of that.
I don't
including-
think that's, other than where I think you're going with this,
Well, Ben Andrucci was kind of the one who let the cat out of the bag when he said, my time with Bolton's come to an end,
Yeah.
and everyone instinctively thought, well, I guess they're unveiling the retain release list
Yeah, yeah.
tomorrow.
yeah.
And then Luke Matheson being
Matheson,
let
that
go, which raised a fair few eyebrows.
yeah, that doesn't surprise me because people have been expecting a lot from him, but people have been expecting a lot from Luke Matheson for a while, and people are expecting him to break through for a while, and he's still not done it. And so I'm wondering, obviously we don't see Luke week in, week out, no, day in, day out in training, we don't see him week in, week out for the B team. Most fans won't. Only the most hardcore, those all the B team games, home and away and all of that. So you can't really do the eye test so much. But for me, Ian Everett saw him regular, never brought him through. Stephen Schumacher's now seen him for a few months, not brought him through. Maybe he's just not kicked on the way that people expect him. Maybe it's just not going to happen for him at Bolton Wanderers. Maybe League One is a level too far at this stage in his career, maybe.
Well,
Not to say that you can't bring it back around, but
Well, how old is he exactly? Is he 22, 23 years
yeah,
old?
and so it's getting to that point where you're not really a young player anymore.
Well, all I'm thinking
And if
is,
he's not brought through now, and he's
it's not too late for him, I will say that much.
No, not at all. And you see these players that leave clubs and go and find a club that maybe suits their personality better or suits the way they play better, and somebody kicks in, or maybe they just, they grow up a little bit, they become a little bit more of an independent adult, and suddenly a little bit more maturity comes in, and that bleeds into the football, and you can see that kick on. Maybe they're just a late developer. You look at the Jamie Vardy's of the world, the Robbie, the Mickey Lamberts of the world, players like that, part-time to international honours, Premier League winner in Jamie Vardy, Champions League games, both. It can happen. I'm not saying that it's not going to for Luke. I'd love it to happen for him, but if there've been he's been about Wanderers now under 2 managers, albeit Stephen Schumacher not for very long, and he's not been given an opportunity in the first team yet, and there must be a reason for that.
I can't put my finger as to why that's the case. All I remember is when he did turn out for the team in the EFL Trophy, that ended up being it. I don't remember him being selected a lot when it came to the other cup matches.
No,
It just
again,
felt like a massive shame for him.
I just
in
imagine that
terms of
it's just that they look at him and they just think it's just not going to happen for him here. And if it's not going to happen for him, then he might as well go somewhere else and try and make it happen there.
I forget which match it was, but there was a post-match interview he gave where you thought, you know, for a young lad, he sounds incredibly wise for his age. Now I'm thinking,
Yeah, I was saying like he had a good head on his shoulders.
well, why not be a figure like, you remember that whole thing, the fabled class of '92 at Manchester United, and Ryan Giggs ended up being the elder statesman of the team, even though he was not that much older himself. Matheson could go away into a team where, because of their situation, having to blood youngsters on a more frequent basis than they'd like to, and he might just end up being that steady and calm influence that those young lads will need in the on and off the field.
Absolutely.
So I don't see any reason why Matheson can't go elsewhere in the Football League. If it's League One, great. If it's League Two, that's fine as well. For what it's worth, if he has to go into the National League or the National League North, whatever.
National is at a hell of a standard now.
Oh yeah, well many of the clubs do operate on a full-time basis these days.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's up until what, 1992 for Divisions 3 and 4, as they were then, to become full-time, and that's only because of the advent of the Premier League.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't surprise me so much these days that there's many more National League teams at level 5.
3 up, 3 down is.
Well, that is very much the next thing they should focus on.
It's on the way.
They won't do
Everyone
it.
It's on the way. Everyone agrees with it. Even the EFL agree with it. They've just basically said they've got higher priorities at this moment in time.
Of course.
But there you go. But I think
We're going a little bit off topic.
but he was the only one, to be fair, for me, who was a little bit of an eyebrow. Like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Most of them were like, yeah, I was kind of Baxter. I would have tried to keep, but I understand why it's not happened. And again, it didn't massively shock me when he got released. Although
Yeah.
one of the kids at school did get very upset because she was a big fan of Nathan Baxter.
Oh, right.
And I said, oh, the return release list been out. She was like, oh, is Baxter stayed? I was like, no, Baxter's gone. And she was like just proper gutted. I felt really bad.
Did you?
Yeah, I felt like I've ruined a day now. I mean, I could have at least waited till she got home to find that out.
Yeah,
but I
maybe. I could have spoken with her the next day asking her, well...
She said she cried when she got home.
Have you spoken with her at all?
Well, she's fine now.
All right, that's okay.
No, she's
that's
not still mourning,
That's
but-
all I wanted to find out.
But yeah, I did feel a bit bad for that.
Just another thing with the B team, they've done the same thing they've done with Max Conley and Sonny Sharples Ahmed in that Jack Dallimore, goalkeeper, and Sean Hogan, they've both been given the
What are you going to do?
option of an extra year with the B team. So that's good for both of them, I'd argue. And 7 players have been offered pro contracts, including Deshaun Lawrence, Hartley Irwin, and Harrison Rice.
Yeah, again, no surprises there, especially with Deshaun Lawrence.
Well,
Clearly.
it could have been a bit awkward, couldn't it, where you score the one and only goal in the Senior Cup final, and then a week later get told, yeah, we've got no plans for you.
Yeah,
So,
it was never going to happen. That I think they've got high hopes for him. And
after all, he's made an appearance
exactly.
for the senior team as well.
Exactly,
So
you're getting that.
good.
Again, those lads that made those appearances at the end of the year, there was no way they were leaving the club.
Well, it almost. We might as well discuss the end of season awards.
Yes, that's what's next on our list. So let's crack on.
Harley, just a mention of him, he ended up winning the Academy Player of the Year. I need to look at the photos once again because we were lucky enough to be able to take photos of and videos as a matter of fact.
Which I've still not put out.
They are there. They will be there. Just have a look on whatever TikTok channel it's going to be on. Is it going to be Behind the Whites or is it going to be?
I think Behind the Whites because that's the one I've got access to.
All right, fair enough. So it'll be on the Behind the Whites TikTok soon enough.
Yes.
But I do remember Aaron Wilbraham did come out, and he had 1 or 2 people. This kind of encapsulated the night. 1 or 2 people. I wish Danny Rowe were there because he would have been on.
Oh yeah. Aaron Wilbraham.
And then we had the thing with Aaron Collins. We'll get to him in a bit.
Yes.
People couldn't decide. Are we doing Aaron Collins or ole ole.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we couldn't make our minds up, and even Vernon had to go.
You
You
just
sort of had a fair bit to drink
Well,
already, haven't you?
To be fair, I think quite a few people have, but there you go. But it was a good night, and yeah, plenty of awards on offer, and of course a big light shined on the youth setup, a big light shined on the women's team, because of
Yeah.
course success for all of those, and the B team, and the first team were kind of very much overshadowed at the awards, weren't they?
I think they had to accept it for what it was.
Yeah, I don't
It's
think
not
so.
to say that a few of them didn't go away empty-handed. The big winner ended up being Aaron Collins.
Yes, he did. 2 trophies for Aaron Collins. He won top scorer and he won player of the year. I was discussing with Mark Isles actually about the player of the year, and he wasn't sure about whether it should have been Collins, but I just thought that with it being a public vote as well,
Yeah.
nobody had massively stood out, but he was the top goal scorer, so it made sense, and obviously,
Yeah.
so
That's
two
pretty much it, isn't
two
it?
prizes for him. Sonny Sharples Ahmed was the B team player of the year, and no shocker there, he's clearly been
Oh, yeah, that reminds me.
staking his claim for first team place for quite some time.
Do you know who ended up liking that post we put out on X? I think his mum and dad.
Oh,
and
yes.
Separate ones ended up going, yeah, well done, son. That
Good
kind of
stuff,
thing.
good
So that
stuff.
was, that
Bit
was
of
very
family
nice.
support. Well,
Yeah, there we go.
yeah,
Well, we had it with Sam Inwood a couple of weeks back. His
Yes.
brother and his dad, I think, ended up
Yeah.
going, yeah, well done, son, giving you first post match.
was it for the thing as well? Who was the one player who's, we had his dad used to tune in to Wanderers Live?
Oh, Paris McGowan.
Yes, Paris McGorman's dad was a big fan of Wanderers
Yeah, he
Live.
loved us, didn't
Oh,
he?
yeah.
Absolutely loved us.
Yeah, I mean,
don't
it did
know why
help.
that was the
It
case.
did help that Paris was always playing well, so we're always singing his praises.
Yes.
Like, if he'd have been having an off week and we'd have been putting the boot in, I don't think he'd have been as big a fan. But it never had to happen, so
No.
okay.
Well, that was very good.
I think the most negative thing we ever said about him was, well, he didn't play very well after he got injured, did he? And that, well, you know, it's not so bad if that's the worst thing someone can say about you. As Chris mentioned, Harley Irving won Academy Player of the Year. Faye Knox won the Women's Player of the Year. No surprises
No.
there. And a nice little speech from and a little presentation as well from Miles Smith. And a lot of recognition for the women's team for their double achievements. And absolutely all deserved.
Yeah, well, we were on the table in front of them, weren't we?
Yes, not far away, not far away.
And
I saw a few of them leaving. Well, I saw a few of them. They kind of left us all like one big gang.
yes, it is.
And they clearly enjoyed
Oh,
the
well,
evening, having a
exactly.
great time, enjoying the success, and they absolutely deserve all of it. And I had a bit of a chat with Miles afterwards, and he said exactly the same. He was like, I just thought they've had a great time, enjoy the success, enjoy a bit of a break now, because when we come back, they are back on the grind, and it's
Yes.
grafting time again. And man,
That Premier Division
He-
will be tough to deal with.
he
I
got-
think they.
He
will
works.
full well.
He works them girls. I mean, I know we've heard he works them girls, but my next door neighbour, his niece, I think, is one of the squad,
Really?
and like she grafts, and from what I can gather, piecing a job around having to do all the training isn't the easiest thing in the world. So-
Unquestionably.
Absolutely, all credit in the world to those girls, because they are grafting so hard to be the best players they can be. And they're not full time. They're not supposed to be full time players, but they're training full time, and it's just a testament to the commitment. And it's no surprises that they've absolutely blown the league away, really. Other than Accrington Stanley, who they just
They ended up winning the league and the cup. Who can?
absolutely, but they didn't blow Accrington Stanley away in terms of the league, did they? It was went down to the wire, but they blew everyone else away.
They just were that good when it counts.
Undefeated, invincible season, fantastic, and a big congratulations, of course, to Faye Knox, again, massively deserved, been a huge standout player, some amazing goals, loads of amazing goals. Well, one amazing goal that she just seems to repeat time and time and time again with that trademark. I'm just going to lean a little bit, and I'm just going to ping a nice little curling perler just beyond the goalkeeper's grasp, banging, and absolutely fair play again, very, very, very well deserved. And yeah, it was great to see them all enjoying that success. Same with the B team, same with the younger lads as well. Clearly just all really enjoying the experience, and it gave it a real positive spin on the season that for the first team, and what usually would be the main focus, probably wasn't what we all wanted.
No, indeed not. But on the subject of for the first team, one person who got exactly what they deserved. Julian Darby, special recognition. The
Yeah,
fact that
brilliant.
He's ended up winning. He's ended up guiding the under-18s to a couple of trophies. Well, maybe 2 trophies. We'll get around to a big match they've got tomorrow to look forward to. But look at everything he's ended up doing. Ball boy, first team player. Not quite Groundsman.
Well,
I was tempted to say that.
Honestly, well, he was a ball boy. Then he was like a trainee on the YTS, then a professional, then went off at his career elsewhere. But he's come back. Youth coach, boss of the entire academy setup for a bit, and then interim manager of the club, and the club he supported as a lad. The town he still lives in. It's an incredible story. You don't hear all that many of those kind of footballing stories as often as you used to. They still exist, but you don't necessarily hear them as much as you used to. It used to be very common that a player would very much be attached to one club. These days, obviously, things are a little bit different. But Julian Darby, and to be fair, he had a decent career away from Bolton as well after he left the club. I remember him, just due to my age, I remember him more as a commentary player. So.
Yeah, I can see the thing.
Yeah, because that was the age of what I was, and I remember sticking his sticker in my sticker book, and not thinking, well, one day I'm going to work in a local school with his wife, like.
Yeah. You know what? I did tell this story back in January, but it's worth repeating again. When we turned up the day after Ian Evatt was removed from his post, we're in the press room. The player one's just done, I forget who it was, but I end up getting to look on the player one, and then this guy walks through and I end up doing a double. What are you doing here? He goes, well, I'm here to do the presser. It was kind of, right, let's all assemble around the desk then. And even Pete Oliver was kind of rushing back in out of breath going, where's you? Oh, there you are, Jim. It was fantastic. I mean, it kind of made me have to think a bit on the fly as to, what do I ask him here?
Imagine that, you're walking in for your first press conference as interim manager, and the press turn around and go, what are you doing here?
I mean, we knew he would be interim manager by that point. We just weren't expecting him to turn out about 40 minutes before we were due to speak with him.
Wandering in without the press officer, just roaming in on his own. But he clearly knows the lay of the land, doesn't he? He's spent plenty of time in and around that stadium, getting to grips with where everything is during his time there, as his various coaching roles that he's had since he came back into the club. So it is magical. It is fantastic. I love a bit of Julian Darby, and as he said, those scenes with his son with his grandson on the pitch, although very amusingly. He did say that as soon as he got out there, he did crap his pants. So he was only a little baby,
Yeah.
He was like a baby, isn't he?
Yeah.
But still, he clearly loved it.
Yeah.
And then when he looks back on those images, on those little video clips of him as a little child in that moment, and when you know the backstory, and that's just you can't buy that kind of shit. That's great. I love it. I absolutely love that kind of stuff. It's fantastic.
Well, lest we forget, he ended up winning his 2 matches in charge as well.
He did indeed, and spot on. It was a great little run, and it really helped actually.
It was a
They
nice
moved the club again.
bridging the gap between the end of one era and the start of the next
It
one.
really lifted the fan base again after things had gone a little bit sour at the end of Everett's era, and then it pushed into that Schumacher starting, and then we went on that mad run, and because that momentum had lifted, and it carried on for a while, and then obviously we all know it gradually kind of stuttered away, but yeah, fantastic for him, and it really just great to see a local lad who's done so much with the club be honoured for that in a way that you don't often see.
No, indeed not. Other 2 awards, George Thompson won Goal of the Season for that exquisite effort against Blackpool.
Yeah.
Not the first time he scored a fantastic goal from outside the area against the Tangerines, it should be noted.
No, very, very true. Aaron Morley winning Player of the Year, which I think again, it great to see, but it kind of telling for the season we've had when someone who's only played half the season for us wins Player of the Year.
Did you see all the response we ended up getting when we put it out on X? People going, is this some kind of joke or something?
Well, they're half the season, but again, I think it's telling to the fact that who was the standing performer of the season.
Well,
you can't really fault anybody.
It had to be him, didn't it? You could say maybe Chris Farino or
But again, because Farino missed a huge chunk of the season.
There is that as well.
Well, Forrester missed massive chunks of the season. The only player for me that you could look at through the season and say was consistently pretty good is Cogley.
Do you mean Morley?
No,
Cogley.
I think Cogley had a good season, consistent, had some really good performances, really kicked in when Schumacher took over and in that Julian Derby era, like a couple of games. And I think he would have been a shout, but again, not like to a level of like, well, it's got to be him. And the same with Aaron Collins winning the Player of the Year. I think it's the same reason. I think that nobody really stood out. Morley did when he came back in, but I think the part of that was because he came back in.
He was a great player for Wickham.
If you included his Wickham 6 months, then he far and away our player of the season, no doubt about it. But I think it's just telling that as good as he was, and I think for that back 6 months of the season, he was definitely the best player we had. But that can mean the player of the season when there's a full 6 months there, or maybe not quite a full 6 months, maybe like a full first half of the season. I think it's a little bit damning for the rest of the squad, if I'm honest.
Although they did that nice video package where each of the players ended up saying, this is why I've always got it. I forget who it was who ended up saying, well, hopefully you don't get too big-headed about it. And they burst out laughing. At the same time. On the subject of Chris Farino, though, he did end up winning the community champion.
Yes, he did.
So that was very nice.
Stuck in, doing a lot of good work with the community trust.
Mike Smith ended up being the Bolton Wanderers in the community star.
Yes.
And Eric Whitfield ended up being chosen as supporter of the year.
Yes,
So that was a very nice bow on the other awards that we saw at the end of the season, awards dinner.
And that's that for the season, except it's not quite.
No.
Because there is another game, if you are interested and if you're available. Bolton Wanderers will be taking on Luton Town on Friday the 9th of May in the Youth Alliance League National Final. It's pre-entry, it's at the Tough Sheet. Why would you not go down? I hear you all screaming. Well, because you'll be at school, or you'll be at work, or whatever normal people do at 2 p.m. Why is it kicking off at 2 p.m? Who's organised that? I would 100% go to that game. I would 100% have gone to that game if I wasn't at work when it kicks off. What's the thinking?
Well, it might be appealing to... I can't.
The only thing I can think is it might be slightly more convenient for Luton.
You think?
Who are obviously coming up from Luton. But we've got a hotel at Tyson Stadium. It's Saturday tomorrow. Well, not now, when that game is.
I know what you mean. It's alright, I know what you mean.
It's Saturday and tomorrow, which I'll be saying tomorrow when this game is. But, come on. 2 o'clock. If you're going to have it at 2 o'clock, have it on a Sunday. Have it on a Saturday, have it on a weekend day where people can go.
Oh, no. The only reason I can think why it's on a Friday, they do that thing, don't they, towards the end of the season where they tell you if you want to make use of the stadium for a week, get in touch with somebody at the stadium. Yeah. And maybe that's the reason why it is on a Friday afternoon.
Maybe.
But you have to think of it from the point of view of the angry owners, the unemployed and the alcoholics. At least they get a good outing for themselves. That's a great Simpsons reference.
Fantastic, but yeah, it's a mad time. But whatever. Maybe it's nothing to do. I'm assuming that it's nothing to do with Wanderers. Like, I'm assuming that whichever organisation it is within football that runs the Youth Alliance League, I assume they've scheduled the fixture.
Well, maybe so.
And the time. So maybe it's. If you work for the Youth Alliance League people and you're listening to this or watching this or whatever, please explain why it's at 2 p.m. on a Friday. when most people are at work or at school and nobody's going to be able to actually go and watch this game.
Come to think of it, why didn't they put this on the bank holiday Monday at 2 o'clock?
Maybe we should run the Youth Alliance League.
I mean, that would have been perfect,
Does he
wouldn't
pay,
it?
does he pay well, Mark, do you know?
No idea.
If he does, get in touch, we'll sort you out. Anyway, there was a football game
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
that brought the season to the close. Now, there are two reasons why we may not have spoken about this yet. Firstly, because there was a lot of stuff to get through. And secondly, because it was one of the most dull games of the season after the first 10 minutes.
I realise this is going to be saved for a couple of weeks from now when we do our season review, but I have never ever seen Pete and Harlan when they were in the office cheering the final whistle so loudly as when it blew on Saturday afternoon against Stevenage.
I mean, it was a dreadful game. I've seen many worse games of football. It wasn't a Bolton Fulham fixture, but it was a bit of a dog of a game, wasn't it? It were rough.
You could tell both teams already had their minds on the beach.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for the first 10 minutes, we looked sensational. Should have been 3-0 up. McAtee's missed practically an open net for the third week running. Sean does all the hard work and then just slaps it at keeper's chest. And Collins has just got overexcited and tried to hit it too hard, I think.
Maybe it's as Vernon and Kay
Again, Collins has done all the hard
he was
work.
thinking so much about getting to that 20 goal mark, that's why he can focus on putting it in the back of the net.
But either that or he saw something he really didn't like about 3 yards wide of net, crowd and thought, I'm having you.
It just, yeah, and from that point onwards, I realise it's a bit daft I'm making a comparison to this, but Arsenal, first 20 minutes against Paris Saint-Germain last night in the Champions League, they could very easily have been in just as strong position as Bolton could be,
Yeah.
but didn't take the chances. We know what happened there at Bolton. On Bolton's occasion, it ended up going kind of sort of all right, even though the rest of the first half kind of had nothing else going for it.
And then
I ended
say
up
the
saying,
same for the second.
well, I was online.
14 shots though.
I was online doing
Oh,
Saturday
sorry.
Sport at that point, and I saw you lot wandering back into the studio going, well, the team next door have convened for Wanderers Live. Good luck dissecting the first half, lads. I had to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, you call what you see, and it wasn't a great game of football. It was the stereotypical end of season
Snowfest.
Who cares? And it showed. There's nothing to play for.
I did think the goal for Dacre Scotland was well worked.
Yes.
Good through goal by Joel Randall.
And it was nice to see. I like the fact that Conley scored as well. I like.
At times, such a fortune about it because Ashby Hammond does save it, and then somehow it's not quite Ian Walker.
Yeah, no, but yeah, it may be a little bit fortuitous, but
You have to be happy that Josh ended
Yeah,
up
and
getting
I
the
liked it. I didn't manage to bump into him actually at the awards night, which is a shame, but fingers crossed for next year.
By the way, how fast is Vernon Kay? Because I wanted to get a photo with him.
And that man can teleport. I'm telling you, he was there, and we blinked and he was gone.
It's kind of, we weren't that far away from the stage, were
We
we?
were about 3 yards away from him, and literally we looked again, he was gone. We got distracted by our lovely man Andy Morgan.
Aye.
And suddenly Vernon was gone. I did see him outside the stadium and bellowed across to him that I thought he'd done a good job.
And he was very happy with that.
He was very happy with that, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
He
so that's
did a
great.
really good job actually. But, again, we've managed not to talk about the football because there's not really much to say about it. It was
Except for the
1-1. It was quite dull. Josh Dacker's Conley scored, which was good. We conceded a goal, which was bad. And that's pretty much that. I mean, there's not a right lot you can say about it.
Except for the fact that
chances missed at the start of the game.
defensively, Bolton have got to shape up greatly in the summer and
Again,
the
I
first
think
10 games of the
I
next
think
season.
I honestly believe that we have seen the last, at least regularly, because we know that Stephen will shake things up, formation and tactics wise.
Although not right
When
now,
he
because
needs to.
he's taking his missus for a couple of days to Ibiza. So we
Yes,
said
he
at
is.
the end of season awards do it.
Maybe. But yeah, we know he can change it up, and if he sees where he can beat the opposition or they might not be expecting or a little tactical tweak, we know he'll employ that. But I think generally we have seen the end of the five at the back for Bolton Wanderers.
Yes!
I think, and I, maybe slightly drunkly, did say to the manager of Bolton Wanderers on Saturday night, a couple of belting wingers, well, a couple of decent wingers, and we'll be banging. And he just looked at me and went,
Yeah.
like, don't state the obvious to me, I know. And I was like,
You got a good football with him.
yeah, he seems like a really nice fella from meeting him for the first time. Obviously you've met him on many occasions, which in hindsight, I probably didn't need to tell him that we were from Bolton FM, because he sees you on a weekly basis. Obviously he didn't know me from Adam, but he clearly knew you. So, yeah, probably didn't need to tell him that, but I added a few scoops, so,
Yeah.
and I don't think he minded.
It's a chance to let your hair down.
And I met Pete Oliver for the first time as well. I'm a voice on the phone and of course on the commentary and on the interviews that the club put out. And of course he did used to do a little bit of comms with Derek, didn't he, for us. I've emailed him and texted him, but I've never met him in person until Saturday. And somehow I'd never seen the man. Like I'd never seen a photograph of him or anything. And so when a voice does not fit the person that you think, I was like, who's this? And then he opened his mouth and I was like, oh, it's you. I just expected a bigger, jollier man. Like, you know, like a big... I think just because he's got the North East accent.
What, the fat controller?
Yeah, but like a Geordie version. I just, in my head, I think, whenever I hear a Geordie accent, I imagine, like... I'm trying to think of like a famous person who sums up that kind of look that I'm thinking of.
No,
I'm struggling now, but it just looks like someone sat in crowd at St James's Park with no shirts on. That's what I imagine when I hear a North East accent. And what I don't expect is a very professional looking, tall, slim silver fox. You know, dude's a really nice bloke.
Yes, he is.
Very friendly, very nice. I just expected a fat, jolly looking man, because he had a North East accent. So that probably says a lot more about me than it does about anybody else. It's a good job that Newcastle fans probably won't be interested in this podcast, so I won't get loads of hate off Geordies for saying we're not all fat or anything like that. Because I know that's not a thing. I've seen Geordie Shore, some muscles in there.
I haven't, so...
Well, I didn't want to, but I briefly worked for the management company of one of the people that was on it, so I had to watch some clips and whatnot. And
Is that fate worse than death?
I mean, there were other elements of the job that were great, so...
Alright, so yeah, again, good outweighs the bad.
Yeah. But just with the bits where I had to watch Geordie Shore probably weren't the most exciting bits of the job. And once again, we've strayed way away from the football.
Like we usually do.
Because there was nothing to talk about. It was such a nothing game. So I think that's probably the best way we put a pin in it, really, because despite starting early, we've run on quite long. And I know that our producer Mark has to run off and film some VE Day celebrations, which I'm sure will be fantastic. If you've been celebrating VE Day today, good on you. It's been good in school. There are people in like military uniforms and stuff like. And like scout uniforms, if you were a part of a group, like a uniformed group outside of, that was kind of like military links, I imagine. You could come into school with your army uniform, your cadets uniform, your scouts, whatever, and it was great to see. So,
I heard some singing going on in the town centre. I wasn't able to see it, but I'm sure I could hear, what's that Vera Lynn one?
We'll meet again.
That's it.
We'll meet again.
It was very good singing. I even saw a little excerpt on telly. Of White Cliffs of Dover.
Nice.
Tell you what, the singer, she was great. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So that ended up being a couple of highlights from today, from the VE celebrations for today.
Absolutely, and I hope we've all had a lovely day. And we, because we finished a little bit earlier than we normally do, because normally by this point we've still got a wee bit to go, but let's get out in some sunshine and enjoy the last throes of today's sun, and hopefully we'll have a lovely weekend. That's pretty much it from us. We've no game to preview because, well, there isn't one, other than the one that's at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Well, there you go. So do remember to like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends, your pets, your alien pen pals, I don't know. I'm going on well off the boil. But whoever you know, tell them all to watch Behind the Whites, especially if they're Bolton fans. And as always, do stay behind the whites. We will see you next time.
Such during the course of it.
I
but-
checked right
There
through
was
it.
nobody watching.
No.
Oh,
Either on YouTube or TikTok. People came on and left. But there were, like, probably, to be fair, probably one of the worst nights that we've actually had for interaction.
Yeah. But we went on a bit early when usually we're late.
We did, but I think that's the end of the season as well.
That's the next point. It's the end of the season. And then as we go through the summer, we'll figure out more and the best way of doing